All right, Raiders show up in Dallas tomorrow, and question really is how they're playing against a bad defense. They're going to have trouble stopping the Cowboy offense. We know that. But what about their backfield situation? I mean, it sounds like they're going to start the McGowan again. Is Pryor out? And what about McFadden? Is McFadden playing?
No, McFadden, I think, he was very questionable. But even so, he may have lost his starting job. I mean, because it's hard to rely on him health-wise. Number one, and it didn't play in front of him now. It's just he was running hard. But here's the thing. Terrell Pryor was healthy last week. Okay, last week, McGloin did not start because Pryor was injured. Pryor was healthy. That was a healthy start, or a healthy scratch, I should say, for McGloin. And McGloin's the type of guy, he almost looks like a smaller Andy Dalton. He actually trained with us in our gym this offseason and coming into the combine, and he couldn't get a sniff anywhere. Guy could not get a sniff. And I actually recommended him to my boss at Fox as a college football analyst. He's that good. Like he has this attitude in there, like he was one of the coaches, and he would help out all the other guys who were getting ready for the combine. But he's just, you look at him and he's not. It was not very impressive to look at.
No, they said they didn't. They admitted that they didn't even think he was an NFL quarterback. I mean, when they said they didn't think he was just a guy who was hanging around. They didn't even think he was a quarterback.
Well, I thought he was just hanging around the gym. He couldn't get a sniff. I'm like, what's he going to do? And that's why I love talking to the kid because what he went through, obviously, with Penn State, there's going to be nothing that's too big for this guy. He's been through it all.
Good kid to root for.
Situation.
Yeah, good kid to root for. And you know what? He hasn't played terribly so far. They should have won that game. Yeah, they should have won that game against Tennessee last week. It was, that fumble cost them the game. They would have won the game. And
the defense cost it for him.
Yeah, they
did. He did enough to win.
He did. That one fumble killed him, though. That fumble killed him. All right, let's get to the big game on Sunday. The Chiefs and Denver both coming off tough losses. Chief defense absolutely cut the ribbons by this Chargers, and also very banged up for this game.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing also with the Chiefs. You got to understand a couple things. Number one, there's no depth over there. So you lose Tom Bahali and Justin Houston. It's a huge drop-off from those guys. Now, Hali it's not a high ankle sprain. It's actually called, the NFL trainers call this kind of sprain a basketball sprain. It's an inside the ankle, mid-ankle sprain. They were a little surprised he couldn't put any weight on it the other day after the game. So they booted it, they taped it, they did all that. They, don't expect it to be something that's going to really put him out. Now, Justin Houston, all right, here's a guy, he's one of them tough as nails kind of guys. His elbow dislocated, popped out, okay, during the game, and it popped back in, right? So he actually, in the middle of the game, he went and tried somebody else's elbow brace on. And the trainers and the coaches are like, thing's not going to fit your gigantic arm. You can't use that. So, they try to tape it up. It didn't work. The problem is when you have a dislocation in the elbow, it's, how injured are the ligaments, just the surrounding area, how bad will it be? Of the two, he's probably worse of the two. But, again, the problem over there is there is no depth behind those studs that you have on defense. It's going to take them a little while to bring in some depth. And the other thing, too, is those guys over there, what Andy Reid and the coaches have really done is, I think in the past, guys in the Chiefs, they tap out real quick. Something would happen, and they're just, woe is me, and they tap out. And he's kind of gotten these guys to think differently now of, hey, no matter what, we got to be out there and kind of fight through things.
All right, enormous game. Now, Denver, tough game. I mean, coming off as bad a loss as you can have. You blow a 24-0 lead. Plus, once you hold them the last time in overtime, you're looking at worst a tie in that game. You're either going to go out and you're going to run the clock out, or you're going to get down in field goal range. You're not losing that game once you held them, as long as you don't run into that punt. You're not losing that game. Right. Now they lose the game. That is a brutal loss for the Broncos. How about the Broncos getting ready for this game?
Yeah, their whole thought process, and actually John Fox just got up the phone with him. He's finally back in Denver. So he's back there, spent Thanksgiving with his family. He's one of those guys who's always a silver lining guy, like, hey, no matter what happened in the end there, that was the worst conditions we could have had, fighting through that and giving up the lead that we had. He looks at it like, hey, this is something that we could build off of. it's going to be interesting to see some of the guys in there if they believe that and say they could, just push it aside and say I'm going to have a neutral face about this, or some guys they just cave as a result. The interesting thing was I asked him about Belichick's his call at the end, taking the win. He said, "You know what? It was thought-provoking for me, and I'm sure other head coaches."
I thought it was a great call, and you know what? Yep. Since they have to get a touchdown on that first time in, I think it made great sense to do that.
Yeah, he said, "Look, I wasn't there, so I don't know how bad the conditions were, but it definitely got me thinking, and other coaches, it got them thinking, all right, just go against conventional wisdom there."
Yeah, I thought that was, and Manning, to me, also, he is not on strong legs here because you can see it. When he tries to throw the ball outside the numbers, he is having trouble getting any strength in his throws with his legs. So clearly, he's not 100%.
Well, remember I told you, Mike, that they changed the way, he kind of does his mechanics because when it gets colder, last year he lost velocity. He loses that grip strength because of the neck and the triceps. So they try to, build him from the waist down. And anytime you're going to have an injury, to your ankle or something like that, he's not going to be able to use the strength here. Now, I'll say this. He is, strength-wise in the gym, I just asked him this the other day. I said he's actually continues to increase. He's getting better and better. But in the gym, you're stable. So it's different. And you're right. If he can't push off, using his lower body, then the arm strength, especially when it's cold, Mike, and that's why they set this whole thing up, especially when it's cold, it's going to suffer.